Big Polly's World of Sports Sims proudly presents the week recap show for week 17. We're going to do one more recap show after the regular season, and I think I said at the latter point of last week that this was going to be the last one, and we're going to have to recap the regular season, and then we get on to the playoffs. So anyway, I'm Big Polly coming to you, and we are going to automatically play 11 of the 16 games for this final week of the season, week number 17. We have 11 teams in the hunt for the remaining 6 playoff spots. We have had 10 teams already make the playoffs. We've had 10 teams, let me see now, 11 teams actually that have been eliminated, and I'll show you the chart and the progress on that as we get going this week. So let's first go through the leaders going into week 16. San Francisco has the best offense, 30.5. Cleveland at 30.3, Baltimore 29.6, St. Louis 28.4, San Diego 28.2. The best defense is Seattle at 18.5, San Francisco number 2 on defensive points at 18.9, Washington 19.1, Philadelphia 20.9, and Green Bay 21.1. Power rankings: San Francisco, Baltimore, Green Bay, Los Angeles, and Cleveland. And we'll go through the passing statistics. Breeze is leading the passing rating race at 109.1, Tittle at 108.6, Manning 107.3. Kurt Warner of St. Louis has thrown the most passing yards at 45.28. Peyton Manning the most touchdowns at 37. Jim Everett has the lowest interception percentage at 0.2. Rushing, Jim Brown still leading at 18.06. Walter Payton at 18.05, I should say. Let me correct that. Walter Payton 17.23. Emmitt Smith of Dallas now at 16.45. Emmitt Smith also has the most carries at 328. Jim Brown the best per rush average at 6.2, and he also has 22 rushing touchdowns. Receiving, the leaders are Julio Jones at 87, Marshall Faulk 78, Larry Centers 77 of Arizona, Zach Ertz 71 for Vegas, and Antonio Gates at 68. Julio Jones still a wide leader in receiving yardage at 15.30. Terrell Owens leading at 20.8 a catch, and Isaac Bruce has the most touchdowns at 11. Let's go over the defensive stats. We have Dave Brown of Seattle, Larry Wilson of St. Louis leading with 6 interceptions. Kevin Green has extended his lead in quarterback sacks with 14. Zach Thomas, the leading tackler, 134. Hurries, Gino Marchetti, Richard Dent, and Short of Carolina, all at 22. Deflections, Donnie Shell of Pittsburgh at 28. So he leads that undisputed right now. Stuffs, Aaron Donald with 17. Tom Brady with 7 fumble recoveries, so he leads that category over Bruiser Kennard 6. The top defender in that category. Forced fumbles, Phillips of San Diego 10, and Lester Hayes has now taken over the opponent completion percentage lead at 33.3 on the special teams. Jenkins of Arizona still leading with 29.4 a kick return. Punting gross, Morstead of New Orleans now leading 47.4. The net, when you subtract the return yards, that's now led by Kern of Tennessee at 42.2. Stan Humphries, or Chris Humphries I should say. Let's just double click that name and be sure. Adam Humphries, see, I didn't have it either way. He's leading in the punt return category, 13.5 with a week to go in the regular season. Zerline leading on scoring among kickers with 120. Field goal percentage, it's Vanderjagt at 86.4. Return yardage, Dante Hall of Kansas City 2017. Zerline has hit 26 field goals to lead the league. Actually, he is tied with Carpenter of Miami. And Morton Anderson and Rob Baronis of Tennessee have each hit 50. 6 field goals of 50 yards or more. That takes us, as you look at the offense and defense breakdown, if you're wondering who has the worst offense, it's Arizona, 16.9. The worst defense is Indianapolis is at 31.1. Just throw that in there. And here's the chart of doom. If the playoffs were today, of course they're not. We're going to start the playoffs in one more week. In the Northern Division, it's all settled. Green Bay, Baltimore, Cleveland, Minnesota. Green Bay will be the 1 seed. Baltimore will be the 2 seed. We don't know who will be the 3 or the 4 between Cleveland and Minnesota. That will depend on this week's play. The Giants and Washington have clinched playoff spots, but we do not know what their seeding will be. New England and Dallas are leading in the wild card race at 9 and 6. St. Louis at 8 and 7 could still catch up. But if New England wins against Washington this week, St. Louis will be out because Dallas will hold any tiebreaker over St. Louis based on the head-to-head sweep that they completed last week in their game. In the South, only New Orleans has clinched a spot. Carolina, Indianapolis, and Houston, and Atlanta all fighting for position. Carolina, Indianapolis, Houston all 7 and 8. If Carolina wins in Indianapolis loses, Carolina clinches the Upper South Division. Atlanta could still get in, and Tennessee, Jacksonville, and Tampa Bay are all out. We have 11 teams that have been eliminated at this point. In the West, 3 spots have been decided: San Francisco, Los Angeles, Kansas City. Seattle, Denver, Las Vegas, and San Diego all have a chance of making the playoffs in that number 4 spot. And we'll have to look and see what happens there as the week progresses. So on to the games. We should first share with you, let me just come back and show you the games that will be done this week in the HTFL. Starting with Washington and New England. If Washington wins, they clinch the lower East Division. New England wins, they're in the playoffs, and St. Louis is out. St. Louis and Kansas City, we will still cover that game, even though Kansas City has already made the playoffs, and by the time we get to it, St. Louis could be eliminated. But they've been one of the surprise stories in the HTFL, so I will do their last game. That's Tuesday night. Indianapolis, Green Bay will be the battle Wednesday. Indianapolis has to win to stay alive. If they lose, they could stay alive for a playoff position, but if they lose, then Carolina wins the Upper South. New York and San Diego fighting for their playoff lives. Cleveland and Seattle will be the final game of the regular season that we do. So let's get to it. Detroit and Buffalo, our first stop. Baltimore, we already know they're going to be the 2 seed, regardless of whether or not they win or lose today. And it is Baltimore, a 41-6 pounding against Detroit. And we'll go through the stats. First, let's take a look at the box score. And yeah, Baltimore jumped out to a huge lead, 21-0 at the end of a quarter. It was 35-6 at the half. Everybody seemed to chip in. Joe Flacco played in place of Johnny Unitas, which is kind of interesting, because Unitas has been their quarterback all year. Baltimore was perfect in the red zone, 248 yards. Detroit actually outgained them at 262, and they were 2 out of 3. They had better time of possession, 33-47, 10 penalties, 63 plays called by Detroit, 45 only by Baltimore, and they only threw the ball 13 times. The weather conditions, it was 44 and a little windy. And only 10 penalties in the game. I was looking at the sacked category, and Baltimore only called 45 plays, but yet they still won. So Flacco was 7 out of 13 and had a 120 rating, 1 touchdown. Leading rusher was Jamal Lewis, 19 of 84. And let's see, anything else? I should give you the leading receiver, but I was already looking at who was the best defender. We had 3 guys with 4 catches. Charlie Sanders 4 for 77, Morton 4 for 37, Washington 4 of 78. Joe Washington for Baltimore. So Baltimore goes to 11-5 and will be the number 2 seed. Leading defender was Ray Lewis, making 9 tackles. So we now know Baltimore goes to 11-5, and they cannot catch up to Green Bay, because Green Bay at very worst will be 12-4. Tennessee and Buffalo, both teams out of the running here. And Buffalo prevails 22-13 to go 8-8 on the year, but they cannot make the playoffs. MVP of the game was Thurman Thomas on a 33-degree day at Ralph Wilson Stadium with a brisk wind. And it was 3-3 after a quarter, then 16-13 Baltimore after the half, then 22-13 after 3, and that's how the game wound up. Lindell hit 5 field goals for Buffalo, Ryan Lindell. And we'll take a look at the team stats. Buffalo was perfect in the red zone, though they hit 4 field goals at 403 yards. Tennessee was also perfect at 258. 13 penalties in the game, 109 yards of penalties for Tennessee. They had 58 plays. Buffalo ran 63. Leading passer was Jim Kelly, 18-27, 246, and a touchdown. Chris Johnson had the best rushing game, 22 for 125, though Thurman Thomas ran for 24 carries and 120. Johnson had 6 catches for 16 yards, but Thurman Thomas had 6 catches for 56. The leading pass receiver in terms of yards was Eric Moulds, 4 for 78. And the leading defender was Tulloch of Tennessee with 11. So Buffalo 8-8 on the year, and that's how they will finish. Houston and Philadelphia. Now this game has playoff ramifications because Houston is at 7-8, and they are fighting for a wild card spot along with Indianapolis and Atlanta. But they do not prevail. 16-10 is your final. Houston losing to Philadelphia. We will check the scoring. It was 13-3 at the half. Philadelphia pretty much had the lead there. And it was 16-3, and then Warren Moon threw a pass to Hill to make it 16-10 late. Houston had one trip in the red zone. It was the only red trip of the game for either team. 362 yards. And Philly only had 248. How did Philly score their points then? They kicked 3 field goals, and Retzlaff got a 23-yard pass from Donovan McNabb. So only one trip to the red zone by both teams. Houston 14 penalties and Philadelphia 5. Well, you commit 14 penalties, that'll kill you for sure. Houston 70 plays and Philadelphia 62. Moon was outshone by McNabb, who went 15-26, 134 yards. How was the weather conditions? It was 44 at Lincoln Financial in Philadelphia. Back to the player stats. LaShawn McCoy, 31 carries, 95 yards. Daniels of Houston, 6 for 64. McCoy of Philly, 6 for 44. So Daniels and McCoy were the leading catchers. And Daniels had the highest receiving yardage total at 64. And Ryans of Houston with 10 tackles. So Houston might have trouble, but we'll figure that out as the week progresses. A 16-10 win, Philadelphia over Houston. Miami was a bit of a disappointment this year. They were 6-9. They played Jacksonville, who's 3-12, and Miami prevails in the Battle of I-95, 31-24. It was a 71-degree day at the Hard Rock Stadium in Miami. That was once Joe Robbie Stadium, and it had a whole bunch of other names. This looked like it was a back-and-forth battle. 14-7 after a quarter Miami, and then 17-13 Miami. Then 24-13 Miami after 3, and Jacksonville made a bit of a comeback to tie the game at 24 with 148 when Blake Bortles threw a 16-yard pass to Jones. But Sam Madison made a 3-yard fumble recovery, and that wound up being the winning touchdown, a defensive score. Not often you see that. So Miami was pretty fortunate to survive. 445 to 408, that was the total yardage. Jacksonville had the 445. They were 3 and 4 out of the red zone. Miami 4 out of 5. 10 penalties in the game, 7 being for Miami. Jacksonville ran 74 plays and Miami ran 59. So Bortles came in favor of Brunell, and Brunell had the better day in terms of rating, 18 to 29, 217 and a touchdown. Fred Taylor for Jacksonville had 106 yards on 19 carries. Clay of Miami, 8 for 77, but Clayton had more yards, 5 for 93. And in terms of the best defender, that would be Thomas. Zach Thomas will probably win the tackle title this year. Trying saying that fast 10 times. Tackle title, tackle title, tackle title. Well, I did it 3 times fast. He had 13 tackles. So Miami finishes 7-9. Jacksonville 3-13. Dallas and Atlanta. If Atlanta loses, they are out. Dallas wins, they make the playoffs. And both happened because Dallas has won 23-14. So we know Atlanta cannot make the playoffs at 6-10. Atlanta is eliminated and Dallas has made the playoffs. Congratulations to them on their 23-14 win. It was 14-9 after the half, and then Dallas with 2 touchdowns, a Herschel Walker 80-yard touchdown run, and then Romo throwing to Burford to seal the deal for Dallas. They had 532 yards total offense, perfect in the red zone. Atlanta was also perfect in the red zone, but only had 238. 16 penalties in the game. Dallas had 12 of them. 71 plays by Dallas, 47 by Atlanta. Romo, well, this was a close battle between Romo and Ryan, but Ryan had the better passing day. 19 to 27, 199 a pick and 2 touchdowns. Look at the rushing output by Dallas. Herschel Walker, 16 of a $162, 100. He had 10.1 average and had that long 80-yarder. Emmitt Smith also, 19 for 123. Roddy White, 8 catches, 83 yards, and I'm not seeing anybody that had higher than 83 yards. So the rushing output for Dallas was spectacular. Keith Brooking of Atlanta had 12 tackles to lead all defenders. Dallas going to the playoffs, so now we know that. And Atlanta going home without playing a playoff game. Tampa Bay and Chicago the next game, both teams out. Tampa Bay has made quite a run here in the latter part of the season, but it doesn't continue as Chicago prevails 27-14. And this was dominated by Chicago. They had a 27-7 lead at one point. DeBerg threw to Mike Evans to make it close. DeBerg also threw to Jimmy Giles earlier in the game, but it was pretty much all Chicago. Tampa Bay outgained Chicago 300 to 243. How was the weather in Chicago? 28. The old adage about Tampa Bay was they couldn't play in cold weather, and I guess that kind of prevails here. Tampa Bay 2 out of 3 in the red zone. Chicago perfect in their sole trip. 9 penalties in the game, 5 to Tampa Bay. 62 plays called by Tampa Bay, 53 by Chicago. DeBerg, the better thrower, 24 of 34, 262. Walter Payton, 141 yards on 29 carries. So Jim Brown will need a pretty good effort to win the rushing title. Mike Evans, I wanted to say Vince Evans, but Vince Evans was a long-time backup with the Bears. 5 catches for 64 yards, and it was actually Kevin House that had the better yardage day, 4 for 69. And let's see here, we had Davis of Tampa Bay with 9 tackles, and he led everybody else. So Tampa Bay finishes 3-13, and there could be a 3-way tie for who gets the number 1 pick in the drafts, let's say. I haven't figured out how I'm going to do the drafts, but I think the first round will probably be a round where you can only get all players from your hometown, like the Buck. You could pick any player. Like if you're the Bucks, you could pick any player who played for Tampa Bay at any point in his career. So like they could pick up Steve Young or they could pick up Tom Brady. But if you want to pick up free agents, then you have to pass on the round, and then you could go all free agent from there. I think that's how that will work, something like that. But back to the games, because we still have a whole bunch of them to do here. Pittsburgh and Minnesota. And this might help determine. Actually, we won't know until the Cleveland-Seattle game is played who will get the 3 seed and who will get the 4. But Minnesota prevails 32-31 at the U.S. Bank Stadium, the indoor facility. It was 31-13 in the fourth quarter, and Dante Culpepper, who is now filled in for Fran Tarkenton, got hot. He threw a 64-yard touchdown to Foreman, a 14-yarder to Moss, and a 8-yarder to Chris Carter with 1:15 to go, and that wound up being the difference in the game. Minnesota 509 yards, 3 out of 4 in the red zone. Pittsburgh perfect in the red zone with a field goal and 378. 11 penalties in the game, 10 went to Minnesota. 64 plays for the Steelers and 69 for the Vikings. Player stats. Both quarterbacks played well, but Culpepper played better, 22 of 38, 303 yards, 4 touchdowns. Jerome Bettis had the best rushing day, 21 carries for $149. Heath Miller of Pittsburgh, 6 for 93. And I'm not seeing anybody that had a better yardage day in receiving yards. And Bobby Bryant of Minnesota had 9 tackles. So Minnesota is 10-6. And I don't think Cleveland and Minnesota played this year, so that whoever gets the number 3 seed, that might come down to net points. So we go to Arizona and Denver. Denver needing a win badly to stay alive, and they get it 36-3 was the final here. So Denver steamrolling Arizona. There'll be a 3-way tie for the worst record in the HTFL, and that will go down to net points. And yeah, it was 6-3 at one point, with Arizona hitting a field goal by Catanzaro, and then Denver got the rest of the points. 30 of them unanswered. They went to the red zone 8 times, were successful 6 times. 3 touchdowns, 3 field goals, 360 yards to Arizona's 174 on a 43-degree day in Denver. Oh, wrong page. Oh, fix that again. And let me see here, the team stats. 11 penalties in the game, 6 for Arizona, 47 plays for the Cardinals, and 58 for Denver. Elway, the best thrower by far, 18 to 24, 275, 2 touchdowns. It was Davis who had the best rushing day, although nobody really had a good one, 17 for 48. It was Humphrey, 6 catches out of the backfield for 37, but Rod Smith had the best yardage day, 3 catches for $111. And let's see here, it's Thompson of Denver who was the leading tackler with 10. So Washington, New England we'll do during the week, St. Louis, Kansas City, Indianapolis, Green Bay, New York, San Diego. This brings us to, we didn't do New Orleans, San Francisco this week because both teams have made the playoffs. And San Francisco sews up the best record in the HTFL with a 48-28 win on a 46-degree day in Santa Clara, and San Francisco had a huge lead, 34-0 at one point. New Orleans made a good comeback. Breeze got hot, threw 4 touchdowns, but it was 48-28. San Francisco. So San Francisco, a fine-tuned machine at just the right time. They finished the regular season at 13-3, and even if Green Bay wins, San Francisco will have the best record on net points. Both teams perfect in the red zone. New Orleans 345, San Francisco 423 in terms of yardage, 14 penalties in the game. New Orleans ran 53 plays and San Francisco ran 64. Leading thrower was Tittle, 17 to 23, 267, though Breeze was not bad, 25 of 37 for 329. He had 4 touchdowns. Tittle had 3. Frank Gore, the leading rusher, 26, 124. Graham had a 6-catch day for 112. Marcus Colston, 5 for 116. And those were the 2 100-yard receivers. And we had Ronnie Lott leading all defenders with 8 tackles. So there's your final there. 48-28. San Francisco moving on. And if they win their conference championship, they will be the number 1 seed. And it looks like the championship's going to go through San Francisco on the way to the HTFL championship game, which we're thinking of calling the Hometown Bowl, at the Memorial Coliseum in Los Angeles on January 15th over most of these HTFL stations. Cincinnati and Los Angeles. Los Angeles is in. Cincinnati is out. So we play this game. And it is Los Angeles going 12-4 on the year. Not a shabby record either. 33-24 over Cincinnati. And this was a close game. It was 20-17 at the half. Cincinnati kept it close. It was 27-24 when Carson Palmer threw to Ross, and then Barr hit 2 field goals, and that was that. Cincinnati 496 total yards, Los Angeles 400. Los Angeles was perfect in the red zone, Cincinnati was not. Time of possession, look at that, almost even, 30-01 for Cincy and 29-59 for Los Angeles. 14 penalties, 8 for Los Angeles. Cincinnati ran 65 plays and LA ran 58. Better passing day was Carson Palmer, 31 for 40 for 440. Everett was not bad. He didn't throw any interceptions. He was 17 for 26, 242, and 2 touches. Eric Dickerson, 164 yards. Todd Christensen had 9 catches for 111. Collinsworth, 9 for 186. Ross, 8 for 120. And the leading tackler in this game, come back here. I wasn't done with you yet. Leading tackler was Casanova of Cincinnati with 13. So there you go, 33-24. Los Angeles will be the number 2 seed in the West, which means Kansas City will be 3rd. It'll be Los Angeles and Kansas City probably playing. They will play each other, we know, because Kansas City is a 3 seed for sure. Los Angeles will be a 2 seed for sure. So Los Angeles, Kansas City coming at you. We know now that if Carolina wins this game with Las Vegas, they make the playoffs. They win the Upper South 30-28 over Las Vegas, and we'll take a look at the box score there. So congratulations to Carolina. That's another playoff spot we know that has been clinched today. And let's show you the... Come back here. Got an AWOL box score. Carolina scored 30 points. It was 30-0 at one point, and then Vegas came back. 4 LaMonica throws. Burris Gardner. It was 30-28. Now, why wouldn't Vegas go for 2 in some of those situations? That was kind of strange, but oh well. Carolina perfect in the red zone, 302. Vegas 3 out of 6 for 428. 17 penalties in the game, 10 for Carolina, 58 plays ran by Carolina, and 65 for Vegas. And Carolina had the ball 32-59. Cam Newton had the better throwing day, 20 of 23, 193 yards and a touchdown. Williams the better rusher, 16 for 52. Garner had 7 catches for 115 for Vegas. And the leading tackler, Nick Bonicani, with 13. Maybe he's heading to either Miami or Boston this year. This next season, I'm sure either Miami or New England would want him because he is a former Dolphin, he is a former Patriot. Maybe they overlooked him in this season number 1. So there you go. We've done all the games except the 5 we will do this week, which are, again, right here for you to peruse. And we'll show you the standing screen again and go through things as they have been updated. If Washington loses to New Orleans, Dallas will win the East, and if New York loses to San Diego, Dallas will be the number 1 seed in the East at 10-6. And Dallas beat New York in a season meeting during the season, regular season, about midway through the regular season. So if New York loses, Dallas could be in there in terms of the number one seed in the Eastern Conference. But we know they have made the playoffs. St. Louis needs to get into a tie with New England, but they can only accomplish that if St. Louis wins, New England loses, and St. Louis has a better point margin than New England. Right now, New England is 39 points to the good, and St. Louis is 35. Okay, the North is all settled except who gets the number 3 seed, and I'm going to double check again and see that Minnesota did not play Cleveland, so this would come down to net points. Minnesota, as I wait for the screen to update, there you go, 16. Cleveland wins, they're the 3 seed. Cleveland wins, they're the 3 seed because they are already ahead of Minnesota. Cleveland is at 68 net points, so they would win that. In the South, well, get out the Excedrin headache powder to figure out who has won. New Orleans will be let's see, did New Orleans and Carolina play each other? Because we know New Orleans won the South, and New Orleans won the lower South, and Carolina won the upper South. They did not play each other during the regular season. That means New Orleans will be number 1, Carolina will be number 2. Carolina beat Indianapolis twice in the regular season. Let me just double check that. No, they did not. They did it on division record. So let me show you that. They won on division record. So we know with Atlanta losing, let me just unfurl this a little bit, that it's Houston and Indianapolis have now clinched playoff spots. So 2 more teams have clinched. So let's just look. Yeah. Carolina 4-2 in the division, and Indianapolis is at 2-4. So we know Houston and Indianapolis are in. Indianapolis, if they win, they get the 3 seed, and Houston gets the 4. If they both lose, what happens? Pray tell. Houston did not play each other during the regular season. So right now, Houston is, let me see here, 68 points down in net points, and Indianapolis is only 44 down. Yeah, so if Indianapolis loses, but by less than, let me see here, 44, and then 68. If they lose by less than 24 points, Indianapolis will be the 3 seed, and Houston will be 4. If they lose by more than 24, Houston is the 3, and Indianapolis is the 4. The West is pretty much settled in terms of the first 3 slots. San Francisco is a 1, Los Angeles is a 2, Kansas City is a 3. Denver has gone to 9-7. Las Vegas is eliminated. So Seattle and San Diego yet to play. If it's a tie between Denver and Seattle, let's look at what happened between these two. Denver won the first game, Seattle won the second, so it would come down to, if it's just a tie, mind you, between Denver and Seattle, what would happen? If it's a tie between all 3 teams, then it goes to net points. But let me just show you what happens, because Denver has already played and Seattle and San Francisco have not. So let's see. Division record, it would go to Seattle. So if it's Seattle and Denver that are only tied at 9-7, Seattle would get the 4. So if Seattle win, but they don't need San Diego to win, because if we look at the net points here, Denver is a +3. Seattle is +36. San Diego is plus 35. If they wind up tied on net points, it goes to who scored the most points, which San Diego would lead in. So that's pretty much the situation there. So we got to just hang on. San Diego will play first during the week, and then Seattle will play second. So San Diego needs to beat New York, which will not be a done deal by any means. So we have some very interesting games as I go back again to the coming attraction screen. There you go. If Washington wins, they win the division. If New England wins, St. Louis does not make the playoffs, and New England has clinched the playoff spot. That's our next game, and I need a good drink. This has been Big Paulie coming to you. We wish you well, no matter where you are and no matter when you see this. Godspeed and God bless. Take care of each other. Be nice to each other during the holiday season, and we'll all do it again real soon. Bye-bye for now, everybody.